A guy named Nate Silver said the following: "The instinctual shortcut that we take when we have too much information is to engage with it selectively, picking out the parts we like and ignoring the remainder, making allies with those who have made the same choices and enemies of the rest." And I think that is so true with where we are today. Orwell, there tons of people have talked about him, but he was really brilliant. And he was also known to say things like, the people who control the information are the ones who control history, and they also control how you view the present and, essentially how you're going to move into the future as well. And you can do so much with that. But today we have so much information that we don't necessarily know what to do with it. We all want to think that we're going in the right direction, but we don't necessarily know for sure. Um, some of us absolutely do believe that we are, and we think that we know, but we could be misled very easily. Um, I am by no means an expert in how to navigate disinformation or misinformation, depending on how you look at it or just what you want to say. However, there are a couple things that I go by, a couple things that kind of I keep in the back of my mind when I'm talking to people or when I'm listening to the news or even when I'm reading my favorite, articles and stuff or articles on a favorite website or whatever. I try to run some things through filters. We need to start from a very basic level when we look at this, though. A couple things that you need to establish in your head is that anyone can lie. The lies can come from the most well trusted people and places that will shock you. Some people are deliberately lying, other people are not necessarily deliberately lying, but they are just bought into a certain narrative and they're it's almost willing to use anything that comes their way that supports their narrative. And sometimes they will even realize that what they're sharing may not be completely true, but they would say things like, well, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually what they do, or I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually how it works. Or this instance may not be 100% true, but this is what they do. And it will come from the most shocking places. It will come from places like church leaders, from friends, from family, and just people who you would never think would do something like that. It can be very disturbing. And, unfortunately, I think we've all probably fallen, victim to it. We've all probably done it ourselves, but we also need to realize when we participate in stuff like that, we are essentially spreading the misinformation ourselves. There's also a ton of people out there that are doing this deliberately. And that can be the most shocking part is why would somebody do stuff like this deliberately? Right now, you can gain a following very, very quickly if you buy into the whole conspiracy thing or if you feed into the conspiracy community, because there are people, I think all of us kind of believe in some kind of a conspiracy one way or the other. Some people go to the extremes with it, believing in ridiculous things. While others, it's a little bit more believable, maybe not going quite as far out on the limb, but we still poke out in some a little bit. And a lot of it has to do with mistrust of like the government and stuff like that. Um, but some of it does go really far. And I think that we need to look at a couple of these things when you see certain indicators and when you're looking at certain things is like just what it should throw up some red flags to you. What are some things that you should just keep in the back of your mind? And obviously one of the things that we always talk about is the mainstream media, and that's a very big subject right now. A lot of people, there's a certain brand of people that would, obviously call them the lamestream media. We all know people that, use that terminology. And these are normally also people that tell you to not believe what the mainstream media has to say, but yet at the same time are kind of getting worked up by the mainstream media. And so whether you, even when you allow them to do that, you're still kind of buying into them. Like right now, we see things coming out about, China, about Russia. We obviously have all these balloons, surfacing and being shot down right now. Um, the question that I would have, if you don't believe the mainstream media, then why are you letting them get you shook up about this stuff? If you haven't noticed, we're kind of in a cold war of sorts. This one here is probably maybe a little bit different than the other one is, but nonetheless, it's a war of information and disinformation as well. So, one thing like the Chinese balloons, there are people that were sitting there saying, well, why did Biden let this stuff happen? They could have dropped a bomb on us. It's like, do you really think that they're going to send a bomb or a nuclear bomb over on a balloon? I mean, this is not World War One anymore. Second of all, is I believe that this is one of many balloons. It's already been documented. There's been, China's done this over 40 different countries, if it was even China to begin with, right? Because we can put our tinfoil hats on there, right? But a Chinese balloon that they floated over the United States. And honestly, like, what are they really going to do with a balloon? And they have satellites, they've got crazy technology. This is actually something that the United States has known about for a long time, and it's actually been documented. I mean, they've seen some floating off of both coasts already before in the past. This is not anything uncommon. Not sitting there just going down a conspiracy line on that, but this is also something where now with everything going on over in Europe, like with Ukraine and Russia, where we're monitoring our skies a little bit closer than what we were. We knew these things were up there before, but now we're maybe just finding a little bit more of them. Um, and they're shooting them down, and I think that really sensationalizes things. And you have to understand that right now, what we're going through, in order to justify military spending, because we have a military economy, that really is what keeps our economy going, probably the biggest thing of all. So, what plays into that is fear. And right now, if they can go and shoot these objects down and make it sound more legitimate, that's what they're going to do. That's what gets everybody worked up. And people are really losing their stuff over this. So once again, with the media, maybe just hold those things loosely and try to figure out, like, well, why are we seeing all of a sudden we hear of one balloon being shot down? Why are we all of a sudden seeing a bunch more? It's not actually because there's more of them there than there was before. You're just simply seeing more of them. And all of those types of things, like rather than just believing what you're here on the media, once again, actually go look into it. Like, you can actually find this information. Not all the stuff is going to be taken down by the government. The thing is dealing with raw numbers. Any one time someone shares raw numbers only, they're going to probably be very misleading. Like, I see private people doing this, and I see major news organizations do this. I have seen people do this in trying to um, in politics. Okay, so you normally have a certain crowd of people that is going to attack another political party, saying that like all of their cities are just these violent cesspools, right? Now, I'm not taking one side or the other in a political fight here, but let's say in a city, we obviously know the big name cities like Chicago and everything. They say, well, there was X amount of shootings or X amount of violent crimes in that city, and that just goes to show you that like gun control doesn't work and blah 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 blah, right? Future editing, Steve here. This can also be done with like COVID numbers, rather than telling you the percent of amount of people that are dying. They will give you like a number, and it will spark panic because you're seeing this huge number of people dying. But when you actually look at the percent of people who are dying from it, it's a lot less scary. And the same thing is true with anti-vaxxers talking about, well, these shots are killing people. But if you look at the percentage of people who have adverse reactions and stuff like that, it's actually very, very small. So I want to add that in just so you don't think that I'm picking on one particular crowd here, because I'm not. This holds true with both the right and the left and anybody who has an agenda, really. And they're normally saying these are all liberal cities, or they talk about jobs alone or something like that, and it's just a raw number. Those are normally very misleading, because if you then, let's say, go and take a look at violent crime, they break it down per 100,000 people. Okay, that's normally how they break it down, is like how many people in 100, of 100,000 people are going to witness a violent crime of some sort if you live in this location. When you actually take a look at that, a lot of these big cities are the least violent places that you could live. A lot of places that suffer high percentages, you have to look at the percentages or things in a per capita rate. Okay, a lot of smaller cities, like Nashville, is an extremely violent city. Small cities in like Mississippi and Louisiana, those two states are extremely violent. So is Alaska, because they break it down per 100,000 people. Chicago and New York City are actually way down on the list. Like if you live in those places, and obviously it also has to do with exactly what location you live at in those cities and stuff like that. Like I'm not saying none of that has anything to do with it. But if you just look at an actual per 100,000 or percent chance of a violent crime happening to you, a lot of those bigger cities, it's actually less likely to happen there than in some of your small towns in America or even living out in the county. You may think this is crazy, but it's actually really, really true. And once again, don't just believe me on this, go look it up for yourself. Um, Expand your searches when you're looking into this to not just, a lot of times when if it's politically oriented, you will punch in, gun violence in blah 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 blah. They will normally show you cities over a certain population. Normally you can go in there and you can edit, which if you're actually looking at a legitimate website, you can go in there and you can edit the population, the density that you want to see. And if you lower that significantly, your results are going to change very, very, very drastically. So now we're going more into maybe a little bit more of a private one here, like with friends, or maybe what you would see on social media from YouTube and Telegram and stuff like that. So this one here always gets me, okay? This one was really big, like during elections and stuff. Um, if someone starts out their information with, I have this inside source, or I heard from this general, I have an inside source in the military, I have an inside source in the White House, I know this police captain, or my or social media followings that say, well, they have this friend that's in the military, they know this general, right? Okay, then they normally go into something like, Hillary Clinton's going to be arrested on such and such a date. The military arrested Bill Barr and they executed him. Or there's even these things now where this one general reportedly said something about, like, pulled his airmen to the side and said, hey, we're going to be at war with China in 6 months. Be ready. It's imminent. Okay, first off, okay, let's look at this with a critical mind here, okay, and not just look at the narrative you're trying to spread, all right? If it is super high sensitive information, okay, like so super secret, right? There is not a general alive that I know of that would go pull some just low ranking Joe to the side and say, oh my God, like, and divulge these top secret things. Why would they tell you that? Because this is the thing. A general who has that type of information, or anybody in the military or in the White House or whatever, if they divulge that type of information, it will put their careers at risk and their livelihoods at risk, like, drastically. For one, that type of secret information, if it were even true, which obviously it's not if they start off their sentence that way, or their information, but if they did, it not that many people would have that information. They would be able to track that person down in a heartbeat, and then you go and plaster it out there on social media, as highly monitored as you think that social media is, and then you plaster it out there on social media. Not only would they find that person very, very quickly and deal with them, I mean, they'd end up under the jailhouse, right? I mean, they wouldn't even just be in a cell, they would be buried under the jailhouse. And then it would ruin their careers just like that. And then, these are also normally the people that say, hey, watch this before it gets taken down again. And then they plaster it all over social media, and it's kind of like, okay, well, why would you be implicating yourself? Or then when you ask them, well, who shared this information? Name the person or whatever. Oh, well, do you want me to die? Or, well, who's behind all of this? Oh, you want me to get arrested? Is that it? Like, you want me to die, right? Guys, when somebody starts off their information saying something about, I've got this inside source, you can pretty much stop them there. You don't have to be rude if you don't want to, but just be like, look, just to let you know, I don't think that I'm going to be very interested in this, or I'm not going to believe this, or whatever. Maybe you're not confrontational and you just let it go in one ear and out the other and you don't tell them about it. But I also think it's important that you let people like this also know that their information isn't going to be taken seriously, because they thrive off of having the inside information. A lot of people who have the opportunity to feel important are going to take it, and they're just going to run with it. And this is absolutely no different. And these people, I have seen this type of information once again coming from community leaders, people like pastors. You even see some more high profile people that are starting to take part in this, because it gets them followings, and it gives them power. There's even a lot of money to be made by people who always talk about, well, follow the money. Well, yeah, follow the money once. I also hear people say, well, all you have to do is follow the money, but then they never tell you where the money goes. They never actually follow it. And I've honestly heard it all. And you also have to take the person that is saying this stuff into consideration. Okay, if it is always someone who has believed in like the Q conspiracy type stuff, and they believe that the former queen, or certain celebrities or the Clintons or something like that are a part of this cabal of people that have done very, nasty things to little people, right? We'll just leave it at that. And or I've even heard that these people are like shape-shifting lizard aliens. They're like aliens, lizard shape-shifting, that they can go back and forth use. And these are the same people that will tell you that the flat Earth, the moon is made out of plasma, that NASA's rockets are made out of balloons. Okay, so one way that you can also see who these people are, like, you can, if you already know, then like I said, you can kind of cut them off with some of this stuff, like when they're, say, I've got this inside source. But if you don't know how these people really believe and what they believe at their core, they might be very hesitant to let some of this information go. But let them go, and then just kind of, throw little questions in there, like, just random little stuff, and let them keep going with what they believe. And pretty soon you're probably going to find out, that they actually do believe in a lot of these other tinfoil conspiracies, like literally that the space shuttle and things like that are made out of balloons, and that the earth has a dome over it, and that the sun and the moon and everything and the stars are inside the dome, or whatever. And you're going to start realizing that these people may have, in a sense, almost lost touch with reality. Um, and if it's coming from people like that, then, I mean, if why would you start believing other information from them if they honestly believe that there are people who are shape shifting lizards? And I've even, like, or that Biden or um, Obama and stuff like that are like these demons, like they're actually like demons in human skin, or that Biden is actually dead. Okay, and you're seeing a double. So is Clinton's, and have you noticed you haven't seen Hillary Clinton in like 2 months? Like, oh my goodness, she's actually dead, right? Or or you have people who believe that so and so was actually a man, and this other person that's a woman used to be a man, or this person that is a man used to be a woman. And you start seeing those types of things coming out. those are, believe it or not, are normally people who are behind these conspiracy type things. Now, I'm also going to go over into what the information is sometimes that they share with you. Like they'll share these documents and graphs, and like, this certain doctor said this one thing, right? And they'll share it on social media, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook. And most of the time, it ends up that they're showing a picture of whatever information that they're sharing. Like they're not actually sharing the document itself. So I had somebody who was saying that vaccines are causing these sudden cardiac arrest among all of these, or athletes, is celebrity athletes. Like athletes are just dropping left and right. They're just falling over dead constantly, right? And now I don't necessarily have a dog in this fight. I'm not sitting there saying I'm pro-vax or anything like that. But I was serious about, like, oh my goodness, like, are you serious? This is happening. I mean, this was being shared by a local minister, okay? And I was like, no way. Like, so I started looking into this, and I started seeing conflicting information on the internet. And somebody else chimed in the conversation and was like, they've spent countless hours researching this, and they have all this information that backs up that this is actually true. And I was like, really? Like, share it with me. I'm like, give me all the information you have, because I'm actually open minded here, right? And they got mad. They actually got mad at me. And I was like, I was being serious. I was like, if this is actually true and you have all of this information, then please, like, share it with me. And I was even trying to convey to them that I am not just this, I'm not necessarily this big pro-vaxxer. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm just like, I want the information. Like, I want to know what's actually going here. Then this person finally did share a graph with me, but once again, it was a picture of a graph. And I was like, oh, cool. But when I zoom in on it, like, I can see this line going up and what looks like dates on this side, and over here probably some other numbers, and stuff like that. And then on the bottom, it had like supposedly a website written on the bottom and stuff. Like, it looked legit, but when you zoomed in on it, it got all fuzzy the way that pictures do. There was absolutely, there was no links I could click on. There was absolutely nothing like that. And then people will also normally say things like, oh, well, they took the website down. Like, this is all we have left is a picture because the government keeps taking the websites down and yada, 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 right? Well, this was literally the only thing that they could share with me. And then they essentially said, I'm going to do this, and then I'm done. I'm done here, pretending like I was just sitting there picking a fight, right? And then they, like, literally, I said, hey, this is, this really doesn't give me anything. I'm like, if you have spent countless hours researching this and you have all this information, why are you so hesitant to give it to me? Like, it sounds like, or it seems like to me that if you have a ton of information justifying what you're saying, that you would be willingly and freely handing this information out to anyone who wants to see it. Because that's ultimately what you're wanting to do, is get, to wake people up, right? Like, wake up, people. And that's what people always say, right? But then when you actually ask them, like, where did you get the information from? Can I have a source? Like, all of that type of stuff, most of the time there's none given, because they actually did not have the information that I wanted. And mind you, once again, this was a person from the local community and a churchgoer. Christian, whatever, I mean, would profess to be anyways, and is completely loaded with a bunch of misinformation. And I believe knows it. I think they willingly actually know it. Because if they did actually have the information, once again, it would make absolutely no sense on why they would withhold that information from. And in this conversation, I would say, okay, well, you're saying that, and that's very interesting. And I'm not even saying I don't believe you. I would write that in there and say, it's not even like I don't believe you, but I found this other information over here that actually does break down the information. How many athletes had sudden cardiac arrest in 2016, 2018, and all this different information with graphs and actual documents, like actual documents, right? And I would share that with this person, and this person would be like, "Oh, I can't believe that you would believe a website like that. That has been bought by the government and big pharmacy, blah, 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 blah." And they would never counter me with their own evidence. It was always another conspiracy that they countered it by. If you run into that, guys, you can literally, any evidence or any argument that somebody comes up with without evidence, you can also throw out without evidence. Okay. um, so if they're coming up with you conspiracy after conspiracy, and you've got this other evidence over here, and they're not willing to give you any evidence in return, I mean, how do you make your decisions, right? Based on the evidence that you can get. And if there's a wide range of evidence supporting this one thing over here, but not really any over here, like, you can't just continue believing down a certain way of just saying, "Oh, well, any evidence to the contrary is just, bleh. It's just, the government's taking it down, big pharma," right? Are you telling me that every doctor's in on this conspiracy? Are you telling me that every astronaut across the globe, China, Russia, the United States, all of these different countries that are now also shooting up rockets left and right, are you telling me that they're all in on this conspiracy? That they all know that the globe is flat? And most of the people that will throw out that information and tell you that you can't believe that are willing to believe some Joe Schmo on Telegram that probably has a bunch of Cheetos stains on his t-shirt, working out of his basement, got the long greasy hair, and he probably hasn't showered in a week or something like that. They might have absolutely no idea who is behind the microphone or behind, the keyboard typing it out. And if they could actually see this person, they would probably flip out. Or maybe they do actually see the person, but they don't know who he is. It's just somebody who their circle has let them in on, or is just parroting the information that they want to believe. But they won't actually absorb information out there that has been peer reviewed, that actually has data that will actually at least share their data. I mean, if I can't believe these people that are actually trying to share data with me, then why would I believe you, someone who is actually withholding data from me? I also want to make another big point here to end this. So there is there is this thing where you can actually keep people from real information by flooding the internet with too much information. How do you know that the misinformation or the conspiracies that you believe in, that even anti-government conspiracies, are not actually there by the government? By keeping people in disarray and not allowing people to actually know what the truth is, like, you can actually do that by spreading misinformation yourself and not allowing people to actually know what they believe. That's actually a very good tactic. I mean, that would be one of the reasons why, if that was actually a Chinese communications, like spy balloon or whatever, they could actually use their counterintelligence to feed into the Chinese intelligence system. Like, so it's there, they're monitoring what you say, so you give them stuff and you flood them with a bunch of different, even conflicting information, so that they don't know what to believe, or that they have to try to pick through it, and they know, like, I mean, that is actually a very, very classic move. So even these conspiracies, how do you know that you're not buying into some government disinformation by the guy that you listen to on your Telegram page? It's actually not far-fetched at all. I mean, that is something, once again, that governments have done for a very long time. I mean, that's something that they've done in any major conflict, is actually feeding your enemies information. Like, you don't go shoot their balloons down when you find out they're there. You actually allow them to leave them there and you feed them whatever information you want. Maybe they do pick up some real information. They probably didn't pick up that much of it, but they might have picked up some real information. But they also picked up a lot of BS too. So I would say, you have to navigate these things very, very carefully. Don't ever just believe everybody. Your friends, community leaders, anytime that they throw out some of these red flag things of, they're only using raw numbers, not talking percentages. They're not willing to share data with you. They always have an inside source, and they don't ever have like real, hey, look, guys, like I actually had this happen. They never have proof, evidence, or anything. Well, I'm sorry, but you probably just have to let it go. I could sit here and talk on this one for a long time because this is actually a subject that frustrates me a lot. You have to do your own legwork, and you can't just believe people saying things that you want to believe, because you may actually be a tool that they're using to spread misinformation. It's something to think about. I think people need to consider that seriously, that if you are into these big, huge conspiracies, you may be actually one of the tools that they're using to spread their agenda, to spread their misinformation. You always try to find something, and they always say, well, do you really think that they're going to let a website like that up? Do you really think they're going to let me share that information? Don't you think that they would kill me if I told you this, that, and the other thing? Yeah, you're probably, unfortunately, you're probably believing some false information. Have a good one.